What does Jenkins' notion of a participatory culture mean for a country whose inhabitants largely can't produce rich media, and even if they could, don't have the means to distribute it? So I've been grappling with this question for a while, and looked at various projects in South Africa and other developing countries, spoken to practitioners, observed popular culture, social practices, and the answer that I've come to when we ask, are we a participatory culture, is an overwhelming yes. We totally are a participatory culture, but it looks very different. And that's what I'd like to talk about today. So firstly, in the developing world, participation will happen through mobile phones. This year, there will be 5 billion mobile phone subscribers in the world, most of them in developing countries. Africa is leading that charge, and South Africa is at the very forefront of that. We have excellent mobile coverage here, we have good infrastructure. Our voice and data is expensive, but our voice and SMS is expensive, but our mobile data charges are relatively cheap. And testament to that is Mixit. So who is on Mixit? Okay, a few in the back. If it's a younger audience, I'll probably get more hands. But Mixit claimed to have 15 million subscribers in South Africa who send 250 million messages per day. And that's because it costs the same to send 20 Mixit messages, which can all be 1,000 characters long, not 140 characters. It costs the same to send one SMS. So we've got cheap mobile data, and we're seeing that mobile web and mobile internet use is really on the increase in South Africa. The stats that I come across is that 90% of urban youth, that's the group I'm working with, kind of 16 to 25, have access to a cell phone. And the numbers of how many of those are internet-enabled, GPRS-enabled phones are very hard to come by. The number that I'm comfortable with is 70%. So we are dealing with a society that this is the technology that they are using. So my passion is using technology for social good. I've worked in e-government, I've worked now in education. One of the biggest problems that we have in education in South Africa are low literacy levels. This is the number of households that don't have a single leisure book in them. This is the number of households that have 40 or more titles. In other words, households where there's a culture of reading and writing. That's an elite group of people. That's the number of schools in South Africa that have a functioning library. So while literacy it's a complex and a big beast, one aspect of it, one important aspect, is that people don't have access to reading material. They don't come from a culture of reading and writing. I've been wondering, what is the reading and writing that young people do in South Africa? I've worked with two researchers at the University of Cape Town, Anna Dermot and Marion Walton. We started small. We surveyed 50 teenagers, 14 to 16-year-olds in Gugulethu and in Langa. I'm from Cape Town. And what we found was that most of the writing that they do is on cell phones, then a little bit on paper. So probably for most of us, the writing that happens is on PCs or Macs. Most of the reading that they do is on cell phones. Again, a little bit on paper, but most of the reading they do is on cell phones. And most of that, generally, it's SMSs or Mixit one-liners, so it's short little snippets of text. So what you've got, as Marion Walton pointed out, is this literacy paradox that our teenagers are living in. On the one hand, at home and at school, not many books, not much reading and writing, not much access to computers or that kind of technology. In the other part of their lives, that's a book-poor world. On the other hand, a mobile-rich world. Lots of interaction with the written word in text speak, but it's writing, reading and writing, lots of interaction with digital technology. So that's the paradox that we've got. If literacy is low and it's a problem, if kids have got cell phones and they're reading and writing on there already, can we use cell phones to actually support their reading and writing of longer form text, more structured writing, more traditional language, get them reading and writing, and thereby support their literacy? And that's the question that I asked. I took inspiration from Japan. So in Japan, there is a mobile novel phenomenon that's been going on for a number of years, where people sit on subways and they read short stories that have actually been written on cell phones, and they also read them on their cell phones. In 2007, out of the top 10 fiction bestsellers in print, 6 of those top 10 started life as M novels. And they became so popular that traditional book publishers picked up on them and printed them. And they become bestsellers in print as well. So there's definitely a culture of reading longer stories on cell phones. But of course, South Africa is not Japan, so we didn't know whether we would actually be able to emulate the Japanese model. So to find out, I commissioned a mobile novel. We held some story development workshops in Kailicha, which was great fun. I've got no idea what's happening in the life of a 14-year-old living in Kailicha, so I went and spoke to those kids, and they were amazing. We came up with a story called Contacts. And we published it on a Mobi site, and I'll show you what that looks like in a second, and on Mixit. Contacts is a story about 4 teenagers living in Cape Town. They do graffiti. They're from the township, 3 of them, the rich white girl, and she's got an interesting story, and there's an interesting dynamic between them. But it's a short story, 8,000 words, and we published it in 21 chapters. So each chapter is only 400 words over 21 days on this Mobi site. So you can see that, you can simply read the chapters. This is if you click through. Each chapter had an illustration. You can't put too much imagery there because people pay for data and they don't want to spend too much money on things they don't need to. We also let kids vote on certain things happening in the chapters, and we wanted them to write so they could leave comments. We also published on Mixit, and this is really where we got most of our traction. On Mixit, it's a much less visual experience. You just, you have a list of your buddies on the left. Contacts is one of them, and you click through and you can start reading. We published in isiXhosa as well, which was a world first for M novels. So what happened? 63,000 people signed up to read the story. A good section was in the 11 to 18-year-olds, which was great. That's the target we're looking for. Also, a lot of uptake with the young adults, the 19 to 24-year-olds. I'm very happy with this number. The number gets less when you look at the number of people who actually read the story from start to finish. So lots sign up, which is great. Not everyone finishes. There's a big drop-off. But 17,000 people read the story. If you sell a book in South Africa, if you sell 5,000 copies, you're a bestseller. We weren't selling this. We gave it away for free. All the kids had to pay for was their mobile data charges, which worked out between 5 and 9 cents per chapter, depending on what package you're on. We were so happy with the results, we've decided to invest more time and effort at the foundation in this project. We've published another Contact story recently, Contacts 2, so it's now a series. And this year, we'll be publishing different stories in different genres. The kids came back to us and said, give us stories about teenagers dealing with HIV/AIDS, with teenage pregnancy. Give us stories that are engaging, but are also real and relevant. So we'll do some of those. Some asked for schmelzy romance, just days of our lives. We'll do some of those, maybe a sports story. But a lot of interest, kids saying, give us different types of genres, and we'd like to do that. In terms of the interaction, the kids can leave comments, and we've run a competition with each Contact story. With the second one, we said, create a character that you'd like to read about in the third Contacts. So I did a word count the other day. I have to read all these things. And there's a lot of them, and they're all in text speak, so it takes a long time. So I was wading through this, not really getting anywhere, so I did a word count on it. In terms of the comments, and this is all on cell phones, comments and competition entries, 100,000 words had come back on an 8,000-word story. So 12 times the amount of content we put out came back as user-generated content. The other interesting thing is this is the day from midnight across to midnight. These are the number of comments and competition entries that come through. And this shows you how cell phones are an anytime, anywhere kind of device. You get a peak at about 7 in the morning, 4 in the afternoon, 10 at night. And it's a very powerful feature of phones that they're intimate, they're with you all the time. And kids would read this as soon as they get out of bed, and the last thing they do when they go and sleep. So in terms of the comments, some really interesting comments came back. We had over 5,000 comments. Most of them were complimentary about being able to read stories on cell phones. Leslie said, a good story, although very short. I'd like to see more and mix it because it encourages reading. So that's a great kind of comment. That's exactly the kind of thing that we want to be getting. She didn't actually write it like that. What she wrote was this. But the point is, and this is something we need to be careful of. It's one of the areas we need to do more research into. Because we don't quite know in South Africa what the effect of tech speak is on our language development of our learners and of our teenagers. But the point is, for me, the point is they're reading a story, they're comprehending it, they are formulating an opinion, and they're expressing it. And if you ask somebody to write on a cell phone, you get that, because that's how you write. It's like on a playground, you don't speak in formal language. You usually speak in slang. It's great. For me, it's really hard to pick up a book to start reading, but I don't mind reading on my phone. So this is the kind of kids we're trying to reach, that hopefully, using mobiles for literacy, that we'll be able to instill a love of reading in children and in teenagers and young adults that'll get them to go and read magazines, newspapers, ultimately take books out of the library. And also giving them a sense of voice that they'll be able to leave comments and write. This is keeping me hooked on contacts. It's wonderful, good for the youth today. It's teaching us a lot. We've got a lot of that. Kids want to be taught. And I think that's one of the reasons why User was so successful, because there were strong messages in there as well, but they were told in a very gritty and real way. So in YouTube, you can post a video in response to another video. And people have these conversations using video. You put up one, someone responds to you, you respond back to them. That's conversation happening in the US. That's participatory culture happening in the US. On the Mobi site, we allowed the readers to write on a wall of the characters. And Songezwa broke her arm, so Tansy says, hey girl, currently I'm sitting with a broken ankle, so I feel your pain, let's go through this together. Thanks Tansy, you're always welcome, I see you're a netball fan, do you also play it at school? So this is participatory culture in South Africa. It's conversation, it's happening on cell phones. It's small, it's light, it's not rich media, but it's participatory. There were a lot of comments about what was happening in the story. That's what I was saying just now about comprehending. And they're actually reading the stories and they're engaging with the content. So the second story is about Airtime is one of the characters. Mfundo, nickname Airtime. He gets scammed. He thinks he's won 50,000 Rand on the internet, and his friends are trying to tell him better. And a lot of the comments were saying, Airtime, watch yourself. You know, these guys are out to scam you. When you ask people's opinion, when you get them to leave comments, and they don't see those comments immediately, and this is where we dropped the ball for sure, because I had to moderate these comments, they get angry, and they get upset. Or they're disappointed. So participatory culture is a very powerful thing, but you've got to be able to respond to people. And of course, you won't reach everyone, right? Not everyone loved the story. So I had to Google what does a colon and a Z mean? Does anyone know? Apparently it's an angry face. So she's bored and angry. That's Thandi. Okay, you won't reach everyone. One of the really interesting things that happened, the other way in which we dropped the ball, on the second story, my scriptwriter didn't fully proofread the story, so we sent it out there, and I got 35 comments pretty quickly in TechSpeak, which is pretty ironic, because this is the mixer generation who can't read and write, right? But apparently, they won't write it right, but they notice immediately if you don't write it right. And that was really interesting. I mean, I really enjoyed that. 4,000 competition entries, and I'll give you one entry now, written by a girl. She's 14 years old. I called her up to congratulate her and to give her her prize. She lives in Limpopo. Her mother tongue is Sepedi, but she says she likes to read. She came across the story, and when we said create a character for us, she wrote this. His name is Mboyo. He's the king of graffiti in his hometown, Welkom. He's Kate's cousin. That's the character, Kate. And he's come to visit her for the holidays. He then meets Songezwa, falls in love with her. Songs falls in love with him, too, but Airtime doesn't agree to their relationship and does everything in his power to separate them, but doesn't realize that he's hurting Songs. All hell breaks loose when Songs decides to leave the crew and go back with Mboyo to Welkom. What exactly is Mboyo's plan, and what will Songs leave with him? So amazing, 14-year-old, this is her writing on Mixit, and I think it's amazing. I think that in South Africa and in Africa, in this book-poor, mobile-rich society, that this is a very powerful way to get young people reading and writing. What's wrong with this picture? With my project, not this picture, but you know what I mean. Basically, two things. One is what we were saying earlier about text speak. And we need to educate young people about writing for an audience. It's not okay to write text speak when you're applying for a job. It is okay, I think, to write text speak when you're trying to express yourself on a medium that only allows you to write small bits of text and you're paying for it. There's some great research coming out saying that text speak is okay, but the research is coming out of the US and out of the UK. We don't know what it's doing to our learners. Most for whom English isn't a first language. So this is the most reading and writing that they're doing in this language. I think the other thing we need to look out for is that from an education point of view, none of this is recognized in the curriculum. We don't understand mobile literacies, and so we're not taking advantage of the educational benefits of it. So although this is where most of the reading and writing is happening for a lot of young people, none of it's recognized in the school system, and I think we need to work on that. So for me, the aha moment here has been that mobile phones are a viable distribution platform for longer form texts and for engaging readers around that. And if we think of literacy in an age of participation, then it's a very exciting concept. It's a very exciting thought. I think this is where young people are at. One of the previous speakers said that if you want to engage people and get them to participate, you've got to be respectful of where they're at. This is where young people are at. So we're going to carry on working on this, and I think if we tap into this potential, we'll see that for the foreseeable future, the cell phone and not the Kindle is the e-reader of Africa. Thank you.